Hello everyone, I'm Street Bad Guy and I am bored enough to make a tier list of all the Dead Rising games. Um, and I've used my own custom template as you can't see the title in the OBS feed, but here it is. Now, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to judge it based on fun and speed runs. So, let's get started, shall we? So the first one is going to be Dead Rising 1 here. So Dead Rising 1, that's going to go in S tier. It's the first in the franchise. It's still considered by some to be the best in the series, and it's just generally a fun game, casually or speedrun wise. Plus, in the past couple of years, there have been many breakthroughs in the speedrun itself, such as Bike Zip by discovered by Pokesal, and there have been some minor optimizations too, like the SMG strat, which I believe Breaking Fuse popularized. But I digress. Um, those were mainly for time skip, but there are also other categories that people run, like psycho skip, all bosses, all survivors, all cases, overtime, etc., etc. Really, it's the most popular Dead Rising speedrun for a good reason, because it's easy to get into, but it's still a very hard speedrun to learn. But once you do learn it, it just feels so satisfying to pull off in an amazing way. So that does it for Dead Rising 1. And now we're going to move on to Dead Rising Case 0. Notice how I'm doing Case 0 before DR2 because Case 0 is a prequel. The more you know. Now, as an Xbox exclusive, notice how I didn't say Xbox 360 because it is backwards compatible on the Xbox One and the Xbox Series consoles. Um, Speedrun Rise, it's basically an auto scroller. There are some minor optimizations you can do, like waiting in a room for a certain time to pass if you're just doing story mode, so that you don't have extra loads. Um, and there are other categories as well, such as the zombie killing category. I forget what the name is. There is also I'm drawing a blank now, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Casually, it's pretty fun. It's pretty much Dead Rising 2. But the speedrun wise, it definitely lets it down a little bit. So this is going to go into C tier, especially for me. And I'm going to preface the rest of this list by saying this video is very subjective. Your opinions may not be the same as mine, but hey, we move. Next up is going to be Dead Rising 2. And this for me is going to go into B tier. The main reason is skateboards in this game. It's not easy to skate in this game compared to DR1. DR1 you can skate pretty easily, and DR2 you wobble about the place when you skateboard. Plus, for some reason, even though the health values are pretty much the same as DR1, they feel way more fragile. The skateboards, they just feel like they break just like that. Um, and the speed run. Oh, don't get me started on the speed run. The speed run is supremely difficult. I'd say even more difficult than Dead Rising 1. It is also about 20, 15 minutes longer, depending what category you do. Um, but it's a fun game still. It's a fun game. And there is also the added bonus that you have some of the best psychos in the entire series in DR2. Some of them are repeated, of course, in Off the Record, but we'll get to that momentarily. Now, what this game lacks, though, is a good PC port. It is ported to PC, it's playable in PC, but if you've ever visited the Steam forums, you'll know that there are issues. It can crash, it can not recognize your controller, so you have to do some janky thing with X360 CE. That's also another issue with Off the Record, by the way. In fact, let's go and do Off the Record right now. I'll do Off the Record in let's go A tier. Now, personally, I'm not a big fan of Off the Record, but the skateboard health has improved. You get an extra area in the game, Uranus Zone, haha, funny. And you also get a change in the facts. I can't speak today. You also get a change in the boss you face during the facts, which in this case, spoiler alert, by the way, it's not Sullivan, it's Stacy. So that's always fun. You also get one additional psychopath in Off the Record, and that is Evan, who is the brother of Adam the Clown from DR1. Adam is one of the best psychos in the entire series, by the way. He's definitely top tier. But yeah, Off the Record, it's slightly higher than DR2 because there are some quality of life improvements. Just in general, the speedruns are almost the same, except you get the added bonus of safety deposit keys, which give you access to safety deposit boxes, which give you money, weapons, zombrex, etc. And it's also got the funny moon jump glitch, where if you jump at the right time on a skateboard while going up a ledge, you jump to the heavens. It's amazing during the speedrun. And again, both of these games have pretty similar categories. There's of course time skip for both of them. There's all bosses. There's psycho skip. While not as impactful, I would say, as Dead Rising 1, they're still pretty good in their own right. Okay, now moving on to Case West, Dead Rising 2 Case West. I am going to put this C tier, but it's going to go below. It's going to go below Case 0. The main reason for that, the final boss. Harjit is a pain to deal with, casually and in the speedrun. I've speedrun Case West, and I could only defeat Harjit because Pokesal, God bless his soul, he agreed to do a co-op run with me. And with his help, we actually beat Harjit. Whereas when I tried it solo prior, I couldn't defeat him. He's just an absolute pain in the ass. So, Harjit, you bring it down. But otherwise, it's kind of more of the same of K0, except this time it's not necessarily as auto-scrollery, as you do get missions to spice it up a little bit, but Harjit just brings it down for me. So that's definitely going down there. Right, so before we get on to the good old DR3 and DR4 games, let's move over to the obscure games, or at least 2 obscure games and 1 relatively known game, but Chop Till You Drop. The Dead Rising on the Wii, that is essentially Resident Evil 4, just reskinned. I'm actually going to put this at a B. Casually, you don't get the same freedom as you do in Dead Rising 1. You're restricted to side missions, basically, little missions to go out, rescue survivors, defeat bosses. And the control scheme actually works decently well. I've run this game on an emulator, and you can actually play it pretty well with a controller. You just have to bind shakes and wiggles of the Wii remote to one of the joysticks, and it will actually work pretty well. That said, the poodles and the parrots, they are actually a hilarious addition to the game, and they're actually not that much of a burden. The same can be said for the removal of Joe the cop and Cliff as psychopaths, because in this game, instead of being psychos, they are zombies. They just roam around the mall at a certain point in the game. You'll get an intro cuts into them. It's actually quite a nice little change up. Same happens with Kent. He can be very annoying, but he's easily dodgeable, and if I remember correctly, I think his zombie actually shoots at you too, which is really dumb, but it's still funny at the same time. Although Joe does have a taser, which can tase you if you're not careful, and Cliff, he has his machete, and he's very fast. He runs up to you, gives you a few slashes, a few London specials, I like to call it, and then he just pisses off for a bit. Speedrun wise, I've done a few of the odd job speedruns. They're not bad. They're pretty mid, all things considered. But casually, the game is fun, and the main story mode, or if you can call it a story, that is, speedrun wise, it's actually not awful. It's not awful at all. It's pretty much just go through the game as fast as possible, just trying to conserve your food for health, try and conserve your ammo for your weapons, trying to get grabbed too much. It's okay. That's why it's going in B. It is above C tier because, as I've said before, Case Zero is an auto-scroller, and Case West kind of auto-scrollery, but Harjit exists, so we move. Next up, Dead Rising Java. I am actually going to put this in B tier. Ooh, surprising. This is one of those games where you can't really play anymore unless you actually own an old Java device or if you have a Java emulator. And the good thing about it is it emulates Dead Rising 1 pretty well on the Java platform. It's more of like an RPG kind of style instead of the DR1 sandbox style, but it kind of works. And plus the auger drill, it's OP. In the speedrun, you use the auger drill for most fights. Now you can use it for all fights if you're lucky enough. Suzuka, one of the Dead Rising mods, creator of Timeskip, I believe, and runner of Java himself, he's used the auger in an amazing way to kill Carlito at the beginning. And Carlito at the beginning, I would consider one of the hardest bosses in any of these speedruns, mainly because he kills you so easily. And if you don't have a gun or you don't have sufficient cover, it's pretty much just dead. The run is dead immediately. Casually, I would say this game is it's fine for what it is. It's Java, but the speedrun, it's actually very, very hard. But at the same time, it's very satisfying. That's why I put it in B tier. Next up is a game I haven't actually played. It's Dead Rising, the iOS mobile port. Now, I haven't actually played this game or speedrun it. So, theoretically, I'm unable to rank this. But Stippo, a very good Dead Rising knowledgeable modder and historian of the Dead Rising game, specifically Dead Rising 1, he created the Watchdog Trainer, which we use for testing purposes and other stuff in Dead Rising 1. And he released a video not too long ago about the mobile port of Dead Rising. And from what I can see on that, it looks like absolute arse. Speedrun-wise, conceptually, I could see it working as a speedrun. It just wouldn't be a very fun one. One cool thing, though, he mentioned in his video is the mall is different and it's not exactly Willamette Mall. So it is technically a different environment, but it also doesn't play like a Dead Rising game. You're going around just killing zombies, doing missions for certain survivors and Otis, etc. And there are loads of giant zombies in the mall called Mad Zombies that you have to kill as part of the story for some reason, and it honestly makes no sense. It's going straight into D tier. Again, haven't played it, so I can't really base my judgment more than that. But hey, it's fun to, it's fun to imagine what it would be like. Alright, moving on to the bad boys. Dead Rising 3. I would honestly put this one in A tier. Now, I'm not saying it's better than Dead Rising 2 casually. I'm not saying that at all. But speedrun-wise, I think it's actually got potential. It hasn't been truly fully optimized yet, but you also get 4 DLC campaigns. Are they campaigns? I don't know. Episodes, let's say, to go along with the main game. And those speedruns are pretty fun. And casually, they're a nice little expansion onto the story of Los Perdidos. or whatever the area's called. I think it's Los Perdidos. I don't know. And Nick as a character, he's the most milk toast bland character, like the main character in all of the series, I would say. Chuck at least had a bit of grit to him and a bit of fatherly compassion for his daughter, so that was his driving force. And Frank's just an average white dude from, I don't know, the Midwest, just trying to fill out his reporter duties, whilst also trying not to die and taking some cool old photos along the way and cracking some one-liners. That's pretty cool. Dead Rising 3, Nick's just there. He doesn't really say any one-liners. It's not really great. The psychos, though, the psychos aren't awful in this game, considering they're all based on the 7 deadly sins. So you got lust, wrath, gluttony, greed, envy, sloth, and what was the last one? Whatever the last one is. I'm not here to recant the 7 deadly sins. It's a pretty interesting dynamic, and I would highly recommend it. The only downside to this game is there are quite a few bugs that can happen, and it can crash, of course, because Dead Rising, apart from Dead Rising 1, bad PC ports for these 3 games. Sadly so. But at least the controller works immediately on Dead Rising 3. What have you got to say to that, off the record and DR2? No, nothing? Okay, we move on. Casually, the game's okay. It gets a bit grindy if you're doing new game speedruns. And New Game Plus, it's alright. It's alright. But I would still put it at A personally, because I still find the speedruns quite fun. Story mode, definitely fun. Definitely very fun. Especially all bosses as well. All bosses is pretty damn fun for DR3. New Game and New Game Plus, I would say. And the DLC episodes, they have their own little charm to them. You play as different characters, you're in different settings, and it's just overall a good time. So yeah, while I do like Dead Rising 2 speedruns, I would still put Dead Rising 3 above it in terms of enjoyability. And casually, DR2 is superior, but at the same time, speedrun sense just kind of outweighs it for DR3. Alright, now we're coming on to DR4. Boy oh boy, where do we put the most hated game in the mainline series? I'll tell you where we're going to put it. We're going to put it in B tier. It's not as bad as everyone thinks, and I'll tell you why. The DLC. Everyone always says it's a very mediocre game, which is true. It's very mediocre. But it's also not a Dead Rising game. Well, why is that, you say? It's called Dead Rising 4. It must be a Dead Rising game. No, it's not. It plays completely out of left field. And it's basically built upon Dead Rising 3. But there's less emphasis on the zombies actually being a threat, apart from Evo zombies, which are mutated stronger zombies in the game. And aside from that, there's not really anything to worry about. It just plays like a standard third-person shooter compared to, say, even DR3, which is bad when you don't feel like a Dead Rising game compared to DR3. And the DLC. Let's just say that now. Mini golf, top tier DLC, because who doesn't love mini golf? I love it. It's amazing. Of course I'm going to enjoy it. Capcom Heroes, that's a pretty fun DLC. I haven't run it yet, but it's basically the same story mode, but you change it in different costumes which give you different powers. It sounds like a fun time. Now, Frank Rising, the DLC that retconned the ending of the main game. Spoiler warning, by the way, if you haven't played Dead Rising 4, or if you don't care, just carry on listening. Long story short, Frank Rising. Frank is now a zombie. After falling from a helicopter into a pit of zombies at the end of Dead Rising 4's main story. that's all fine and dandy. It's pretty cool to have some new powers to play with. You know, it's not the standard run gun, shooty tooty kind of game. But at the same time, it's got this kind of edge to it, like this kind of gripping feeling. Like it's actually genuinely more fun than the main game. I'm not just saying that because you play as Frank again, and you're a zombie. That's pretty cool. That's like a first in the Dead Rising series, right? It is, but at the same time, it's a short speed run. It's also short casually, and while the story in the DLC is nothing special, it's pretty much just Frank working together with Blackburn and Hammond to try and find a cure to turn him back into a human. Spoiler alert, that happens. And you just have to go along, find some princess wasps, because they are crucial for getting your powers back and also for getting the good ending of the game. But the bad ending, you just get the mandatory wasps. You go on through to the end of the game, you get into the activation chamber. Easy. Pretty good. I would say that's probably the best speedrun out of the Dead Rising 4 conglomerate. The main story mode is very boring. I'm not going to go into detail here. There's really no weight or substance to it apart from obviously Frank dying at the end. It's kind of meh. But the speedrun is okay. It is pretty much get from A to B. You don't really do much else. You just play the game as well as you can. There's no fancy tricks or anything, which is alright. There's no fancy tricks in DR3 either, apart from, I guess, a few little optimizations. But DR4, there's literally none at the moment, apart from the one out of bounds in the mall area. Whilst on the Segway, you can skip the medieval village if you get out of bounds and you jump into the correct death plane area, and then you'll respawn in the place that you go to after medieval village. That part is pretty cool. But it's in B tier because of the DLCs. And that's my tier list of all the Dead Rising games, judged based on fun and speedrun. I hope you enjoy this video, and if you want to make your own tier list of Dead Rising games, I'll leave a link in the description to my template. So share your tiers with me, share your tier list with me. It'll be fun to see them. And yeah, that just about does it. Thank you for watching. I'll try and make more content in the future that's not just speedrunning, but it's a case of motivation and ideas. And I don't want to strictly do Dead Rising stuff exclusively, even though I love Dead Rising as a series. But I'll see what comes up in the future. But anyway, that's it for now. Thank you all for watching, and I hope you have a good day.